You are not getting older and your immune system isn't weak. You're mismanaging stress and you're trying to supplement your way out of it. Let's just start there. Because if you're over 40 and you keep catching every cold that goes to the office, if you feel run down every few months, or if you're constantly on the edge of being sick, this is not random. And it's not bad luck. And it's definitely not fixed by throwing down some zinc and vitamin C. Here's what bothers me. High performers will optimize the hell out of their business. They will track revenue, KPIs, margins, cash flow. But when it comes to their physiology, they say things like, well, I guess my immune system just isn't what it used to be. No, your immune system didn't just decide to quit. It is responding to the environment that you have created. Let me ask you something directly. Are you sleeping deeply? Are you sleeping consistently? 7 to 8 hours, no screens at midnight? Is your blood sugar stable? Or are you running on caffeine and adrenaline until noon? Is your stress load regulated? Or are you in constant output mode with no parasympathetic recovery? Because your immune system is downstream of all of those things. You don't have a weak immune system, you have a stressed system. And stress systems reallocate energy. Here's how this works in real life. When you live in constant high output, deadlines, responsibility, travel, hard gym sessions, late nights, early mornings, your body shifts into survival prioritization. Cortisol rises, sympathetic tone stays elevated, recovery bandwidth shrinks. The body makes a decision. Energy goes to immediate survival, not long-term resilience. Immune function is expensive. Fighting viruses aggressively requires energy. Producing antibodies requires energy. Mounting inflammatory responses requires energy. And if your system is already taxed, your immune system becomes conservative. Not broken, conservative. So when a virus hits, instead of crushing it quickly, you linger. Instead of bouncing back in 2 days, you drag for 10. Instead of feeling sharp again, you feel maybe 80% for weeks on end. And then what do most people do at that point? They buy more supplements. So let me say something very clearly here. Supplements are support. They are not structural correction. If your sleep is fragmented, if your blood sugar is volatile, if your nervous shifting, never downshifting, if your training volume exceeds your recovery capacity, zinc is not your solution. You cannot outcapsule chronic stress. Here's the part that's uncomfortable for a lot of people. Some of you wear your stress like a badge of honor. You think that pushing through makes you stronger. It doesn't. It just makes you brittle. High performers don't burn out because they're weak. They burn out because they never recalibrate load. And immune suppression is often one of the very first signals. Not collapse, not breakdown, just frequent minor illness, feeling run down, slow recovery, persistent inflammation, low-grade fatigue. None of that is aging. That's cumulative stress debt. Now, here's a biological piece. When stress remains high for months or years, cortisol rhythm gets distorted. Not just high, but distorted. Morning energy drops, evening alertness increases, and sleep depth decreases. Thyroid conversion becomes less efficient. Free T3 trends lower, and metabolic output slows. Then, insulin sensitivity drifts. Inflammatory tone rises, and recovery shrinks. And your immune system, it adapts to conserve. So, if you keep getting sick, or you constantly feel like you're fighting something, the question isn't, what supplement am I missing? The right question is, what system have I overdrawn? Because your body keeps score, and it doesn't care how driven you are. So, I want to break down exactly how chronic stress changes immune resilience over time. Not with academic jargon, but with practical physiology you can actually understand. Because once you see how this cascade works, you'll stop blaming your immune system and start auditing your architecture. So Let's talk about what chronic stress actually does to your immune resilience. Not in theory, but in real life. Your body is constantly making trade-offs. It's not emotional, it's strategic. When stress is short term, your body adapts very well. You push hard, you recover, you grow stronger. But when stress is layered and chronic, the body shifts priorities. Think of it like this. You have a fixed energy budget. If more energy is required to manage deadlines, travel, poor sleep, hard training, and consistent cognitive load, then less energy is available for repair and defense. That includes immune defense. None of this is dramatic either. It's subtle. At first, you probably won't notice anything. And when you start noticing things, it's going to be like catching the cold that your kids brought home. It lingers longer than it used to. You feel almost sick more often. Your sinuses are constantly irritated. Your recovery after training takes longer. You're not collapsing. You're drifting. And here's what's happening under the surface. When stress remains elevated, cortisol rhythm starts to flatten. Not just high, but flattened. You don't get that strong, clean morning rise. Instead, you wake up groggy. You need caffeine. You have to push through. By evening, your body's wired. Sleep becomes lighter, more fragmented, less restorative. And here's what a lot of people miss. Deep sleep is where immune repair happens. It's where growth hormone pulses and where tissue repair accelerates. It's where immune surveillance strengthens. If deep sleep shrinks, immune resilience shrinks. And you can't supplement your way around that. It's just not possible. Now layer in on top of that blood sugar instability. If you're running on coffee in the morning, undereating during the day, and then overeating at night, your glucose fluctuates. Cortisol will rise to stabilize it. Insulin spikes, inflammation increases. Even mild chronic inflammation reduces immune efficiency, and not in a dramatic way. It's you're at 80% sort of way. And 80% over months feels like chronic fatigue. Let's talk thyroid, because this one is rarely connected to immunity. When stress remains high, thyroid conversion becomes less efficient. You may still produce thyroid hormone, but less of it is converted into the active form your cells actually use. When free T3 trends lower, metabolic output drops. Lower metabolic output means lower energy availability, and immune cells require energy. So your immune response becomes slower, more conservative, less aggressive. You don't get flattened by a virus, you just don't clear it as quickly. Now ask yourself honestly, have you been operating in constant output mode for years? Travel, responsibility, late nights, heavy training, no true off switch? Because if you have, your immune system isn't weak, it's just under-resourced, and that's different. This is where identity comes in. A lot of high performers believe that pushing harder solves everything. It really doesn't. At a certain point, pushing harder becomes stress stacking, and stress stacking eventually reduces resilience. You don't notice it at first because you're still functioning at a high level. You're still leading, still earning, still training, still working out, but the margin is shrinking. And immunity is often the first thing to show you that that margin is gone. Let me ask you something uncomfortable. If rest days don't fix your fatigue, what does that tell you? It tells you the issue isn't workload, it's architecture. You can't fix structural stress misalignment with a 1 weekend off. You fix it by recalibrating sleep timing, light exposure, blood sugar stability, training intensity, recovery blocks, and nervous system regulation. This isn't soft stuff, it's discipline, because discipline isn't just pushing, it's knowing when to restore. In the next segment, we're going to talk about why some high performers don't just get sick more often, they start feeling chronically inflamed, puffy, foggy, less sharp, more reactive. And that's where chronic low-grade inflammation enters the picture. Not dramatic, but definitely performance altering. Because once inflammation becomes your baseline, clarity drops. And clarity is everything. Let's talk a little bit more about the phase most executives don't recognize. chronic, low-grade inflammation. Not the dramatic kind, not fever, not swollen lymph nodes, and not acute infection. I'm talking about the background hum, the constant internal friction. You feel this with things like puffiness, brain fog, joint stiffness, slower recovery, shorter fuse, lower patience, and heavier mornings. Nothing catastrophic, just not sharp. Here's the problem. When stress stays elevated and recovery shrinks, inflammation slowly rises. Not because your body is failing, because it's adapting. Chronic stress increases sympathetic tone. Sympathetic dominance increases inflammatory signaling. Poor sleep increases inflammatory tone. Blood sugar swings increase inflammatory tone. And visceral fat increases inflammatory tone. This isn't just theory. This is biological architecture. And inflammation is expensive. It consumes energy. It interferes with hormone signaling. It blunts neurotransmitter efficiency. It increases perceived fatigue. So now you're not just fighting viruses' less efficiency, you're operating in a slightly inflamed environment all the time. And that changes everything. Think about it. Your brain is extremely sensitive to inflammation. Even small increases can affect focus, motivation, mood stability, and decision clarity. If you've ever felt foggy for no clear reason, less driven, more reactive, or less patient under pressure, that's not weakness. That's inflammatory load affecting your performance. Now layer that onto immune resilience. When inflammation is chronically elevated, your immune system becomes dysregulated. Not suppressed in a dramatic way, but dysregulated, which means sometimes overreactive, sometimes underperforming, or sometimes less precise. So you might feel allergic more often, congested more often, or reactive to foods. You just don't feel robust. You feel sensitive. Oh boy, high performers hate that word, right? Sensitive, because it feels like decline, but it's not decline, it's overload. Now let's connect these dots. Chronic stress elevates cortisol. Over time, cortisol rhythm flattens. Your sleep suffers, blood sugar drifts, thyroid conversion becomes less efficient. Your metabolic output drops, inflammation rises, and immune precision drops. You get sick more often, you feel run down more often, you recover slower, and none of this is dramatic. So you normalize it. You say, maybe I'm just getting older. That's not it. You're accumulating stress debt. And here's where it gets sharper. Some of you are training hard through this. You're going to the gym, high intensity, high volume, minimal recovery. You think you're building resilience. But if your nervous system is already overloaded, hard training becomes another stress input, not adaptation. Stress plus stress does not equal strength. It equals cumulative load. And cumulative load without recalibration leads to fragility. So let me ask you something directly. When was the last time you audited your recovery with the same seriousness that you audit your output? Do you track HRV trends? Do you track morning body temperature? Do you know your resting heart rate baseline? Do you protect sleep like it's revenue? Or do you squeeze it in between meetings and scrolling? Because your immune system is downstream of your recovery, not your supplement stack. You cannot inflame your system for years on end and expect robust immunity. You cannot compress sleep for years and expect resilience. You cannot live in constant cognitive pressure and expect a calm nervous system. Eventually, the system pushes back. And it doesn't push back with drama, it pushes back with drift, more sickness, more inflammation, less sharpness. That is the stage that most executives live in for years. Not broken, just compromised. Let's talk about something most high performers won't admit. Sometimes getting sick is the only time you slow down. And that should bother you, because if illness is your only off switch, you don't have recovery built into your system. You have collapse built into it. Think about it. You push, you override fatigue, you ignore early warning signs, you compress sleep, you stack meetings, you train hard, you travel, you caffeinate, you power through. And your body just gives you hints at first. Low energy, irritability, poor sleep, mild inflammation, a frequent, almost sick feeling. But you don't listen because, well, nothing is catastrophic. So the body escalates. Cold, flu, sinus infection, bronchitis, something that forces you to stop. And suddenly, you're in bed. No meetings, no training, no output, just rest. And part of you feels relieved. That relief is the red flag because that means sickness has become your recovery strategy. That's not resilience. That's poor load management. High performers understand load management in business, but they don't in their personal life. You don't run your team at 100% capacity 365 days a year. You build in cycles. You plan for recovery. You manage bandwidth. But many of you treat your nervous system like it's unlimited. Here's a hint. It's not. There's a concept that I want you to understand. Recovery bandwidth. Every system has a capacity to handle stress and then return to baseline. When stress exceeds recovery capacity for too long, that baseline shifts. You don't bounce back fully. You operate slightly below optimal. Then you stack more stress and your baseline shifts again. Over time, your normal becomes under-recovered. You don't feel terrible. You just don't feel sharp. Now, here's the dangerous part. You adapt to that level. You forget what true clarity looks like. You forget what deep recovery feels like. You forget what waking up energized feels like. And because nothing is dramatically wrong, you don't change anything. Until you get sick and illness forces parasympathetic dominance. You sleep more, you cancel meetings, you stop training, you finally downshift a little bit. And your system recalibrates slightly. And you feel a little bit better. And then you repeat the cycle. This is not strength. That is a stress addiction pattern. And it's common in driven people. You've wired yourself to operate in sympathetic dominance. Go mode, solve mode, lead mode. But your immune system requires oscillation. Up, down, output, recovery. Without oscillation, resilience will shrink. So let's get practical. If you keep getting sick every 2 to 3 months, that is not coincidence. That's rhythm failure. If you constantly feel on the edge of illness, that's not random. That is suppressed recovery. If every time you travel or have a heavy week you crash, that's not weak immunity. That is low margin. Let me ask you a few things directly. Do you have structured recovery blocks in your calendar? Do you protect sleep like it's a strategic asset? Do you periodize training intensity? Do you regulate caffeine intake? Do you get real morning light exposure? If you're up at 5 a.m. and the sun isn't up, I get it. I'm the same. It's dark when my alarm goes off. But what you need to do is turn on bright overhead lights immediately. Not dim lamps, not your phone. And as soon as natural light is available, go outside for at least 5 to 10 minutes with no sunglasses. You're anchoring circadian rhythm because circadian rhythm governs immune rhythm. This isn't soft stuff. Again, it's structural. You don't build resilient immunity by grinding harder. You build it by managing load intelligently. And here's the truth most people really don't want to hear. You don't need more immune supplements. You need things like better sleep timing, stable blood sugar, lower evening stimulation, strategic deloads, and nervous system regulation. You need to restore margin because margin equals resilience. In this final segment, we're going to pull all of this together. We're going to talk about what it actually looks like to rebuild immune resilience properly, not through hacks, but through hierarchy. Mitochondria, metabolism, nervous system, hormones, organs, and symptoms. Because if you address it in that order, getting sick repeatedly stops being your norm, and resilience becomes your baseline again. And yes, it's completely reversible, but only if you stop wearing stress as a badge of honor. So, if you're not immune deficient, if you're not just unlucky, if you're not aging into fragility, what does rebuilding actually look like? It starts with accepting one uncomfortable truth. You cannot restore resilience at the symptom level. You restore it at the systems level, and systems have hierarchy. Again, mitochondria, metabolism, nervous system, hormone, organs, and finally, symptoms. If you try and reverse that order, you chase your tail. Most people start at symptoms. They say, I keep getting sick, so they buy immune supplements, vitamin C, zinc. Wrong level. Let's walk this up properly. First layer, mitochondria. Your cells produce energy through mitochondrial function. Chronic stress, poor sleep, blood sugar volatility, and inflammation all reduce mitochondrial efficiency. Less cellular energy means less energy available for immune defense. You don't feel this as mitochondrial dysfunction. You feel it as fatigue, slow recovery, brain fog, and lower stress tolerance. If your cellular energy is constrained, your immune system operates conservatively. So step one is restoring energy production capacity. That means sleep depth and timing, morning light exposure, stable blood sugar, appropriate training load, and true recovery days. Not just days without the gym, days without sympathetic overload. Second layer, metabolism. If fasting insulin is elevated, if triglycerides are creeping up, if waist circumference is drifting, you're operating in a low-grade inflammatory environment. That suppresses immune precision. You don't need extreme dieting. You need metabolic stability, protein consistency, whole food carbohydrate timing, reduce late night eating, lower alcohol frequency, and stable glucose curves. Because stable blood sugar equals stable energy equals stronger immune response. Third layer, nervous system. If you live in constant sympathetic drive, immune resilience is going to drop. Parasympathetic tone is required for repair, and you build that through consistent sleep windows, breathing protocols, lower evening stimulation, deliberate downshifting, sunlight exposure, and reduced digital overload at night. And I know what you might be thinking, but this is not soft work. It is complete nervous system recalibration. And without it, everything downstream struggles. Fourth layer, hormones. Once sleep, metabolism, and nervous system regulation improve, hormones respond. Thyroid conversion becomes more efficient. Free T3 trends upward, reverse T3 trends downward. Testosterone signaling improves, and cortisol rhythm normalizes. If you jump to hormone intervention before stabilizing the foundation, you are building on instability. And yes, TRT can be life-changing. I've lived it. I've been on TRT for some time now. But if stress architecture is broken, hormones alone won't create resilience. They only amplify what's already there. Fifth layer, organs and immune expression. Now, immune resilience improves. You bounce back faster, you clear viruses more efficiently, inflammatory baseline drops, and you don't feel almost sick all the time. Notice something important. At no point did I say, take more zinc, add more vitamin C, buy an expensive supplement stack. Support is fine, but structure wins. If you keep getting sick, have you audited your sleep timing? Morning light exposure, HRV trends, fasting insulin, training load, alcohol frequency, evening screen exposure? Or did you just assume your immune system is weak? Because weakness is rarely the issue. Misalignment is usually the case, and misalignment is fixable. This is exactly why I use the assess method with clients. We don't guess. We analyze. We look at energy trends, circadian rhythm, recovery metrics, metabolic stability, hormonal signaling, and inflammatory markers. Not to diagnose disease, but to identify drift, because drift is reversible. Disease is harder. If you are constantly run down, this is not your new normal. It's your current architecture. And architecture can be rebuilt, but only if you stop glorifying exhaustion, only if you stop confusing grind with strength, and only if you stop outsourcing your vitality to supplements and hoping something sticks. You built your career with systems. You can build your physiology the same way. So if this hit, good, it should. If you're a high performer who refuses to normalize decline, subscribe. If you want a structured starting point, download the 30-day Executive Energy Reset Blueprint. Links in the description, or you can message me. If you want deeper analysis using the ASSESS method, apply for coaching. Because resilience is not random, it's engineered. And engineered systems don't rely on luck. They rely on structure. So stop blaming your immune system. Start rebuilding your architecture, because that is where real resilience lives. I'll see you all very soon. Take care.